Hello.
Hi there.
Hey,
Nice to
good
see
to
you
see
again,
you.
Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
You're very welcome. Happy to talk about the most annoying shits in the entire book.
Oh yeah, we love it.
Yeah,
We
I
love
love
it.
these guys.
Yeah, this
Uh,
is the tricksy Hillfolk.
yeah, really feel like we really captured the flavor with this one of what we were trying to go for. Like, they're definitely not something else in, a different set of clothing. They are
No,
the annoying assholes of the entire game.
yeah,
Even more so than Faye. Like Faye is scary. These guys are just freaking annoying.
just annoying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, uh, do you want to kick us off with a bit of lore? Who are the Hillfolk, Jeff?
yeah. So I was mooching on this, and I think it's really important to say two things about the Hillfolk. And the first of those is that the hills are the true wilderness in this world, but I guess also kind of a bit in our world as well. So we think of the woods as being sort of the wild place
Hmm.
outside of civilization, but it's also the place that's kind of in contention with the civilization. It's the place that's getting cleared. If you think of the great forest that used to be across the
Hmm.
UK that was deforested to build well, largely ships actually, but
Hmm.
certainly sort of towns and places. It's there's kind of a battle going on between those two places. Whereas the really remote places, you think like the Highlands of Scotland or the Devonshire moors or the Pennines, those kind of areas
Hmm.
that are not they're just distant from everything, and people
Hmm.
live there, but in small groups, and they're kind of other than kind of grazing flocks and things, they're not really that great for civilization because they're cut
Hmm.
off and they're difficult terrain. It's hard to maneuver in those spaces. So they are
And
the
you
kind of
can't chop down a hill to make
exactly.
space for a
Well, I
village.
mean, not easily. Certainly not with like Bronze Age, early Iron Age tools,
Yes.
anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah, so there are uses for them, but they're not immediately habitable
Hmm.
places. And as a result of which, they're the places that the people who are kind of slightly outside of society might take themselves to
Hmm.
go. And that leads me to the second point, which is, I think anyway, the current hill folk were probably hill folk before the Fey Exodus. I don't think this is something that's happened since the Fey Empire has collapsed. Like,
Hmm.
who knows what the initial dealings with the leprechauns and the Spriggans were for the Fae, what they were
Hmm.
thinking bringing those people in. But I suspect that whatever it was didn't last very long, and they probably took themselves out of that pretty quickly and went off somewhere
Hmm.
else. And the Fae were just glad to let them go because they were such a pain in the backside to have hanging around the place
Hmm.
anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe they were even an accidental thing, maybe they rode in on the back of a convoy. It's that
An invasive species.
exactly an invasive species, an accidentally imported life form that then causes havoc for everybody until you manage to quell it and push it somewhere else.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And certainly the leprechauns in particular have that sort of matriarchal system as well, which is quite common in a lot of sort of outsider situations. Societies on the fringe, they aren't, depressingly, most kind of agricultural settled societies, organizational hierarchical societies tend to be patriarchal.
Mm.
And so there is an element of them kind of being on the outside, being out on the fringe.
Yeah, definitely. And they're not a people that would be particularly welcome not on the fringe. It's
Yes.
they're very I guess antisocial by their very nature. It's not like you have a lot of sympathy for them because they're
No.
outcasts. They wouldn't function very well within society.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and at the same time, I think they do kind of play a bit of a role. It's just it's not one that society, certainly ordered society, wants there to be.
Hmm.
Yeah, is that they are the overflow for people who don't fit in, but also um there to criticize and challenge and show other ways of being.
Yes, although I don't know that
There's nothing
Spriggan
intentional
society or
about that.
Leprechaun society is particularly something to be aspired to. I don't know that
No.
even as a kind of super liberal lefty, I see much appeal within the society of
Yeah.
the maybe the leprechauns a little bit more so because they are um, they're kind of, although they're mischievous, they're not really intent on violence. They're more just
Mm.
out. They're more anarchic. They're more
Yeah.
just out to have a good time. Whereas
Yeah.
the Spriggans generally just they don't really care. They see
Yeah.
stuff that they want and they take it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think there is something a little iconoclastic about all that. But I mean, this is me projecting. They don't know about that or think about all that.
Not
Yeah.
consciously anyway.
No, absolutely. Maybe for the next edition, though, we style them up as like anarchists and Stalinist bank robbers.
Yeah,
Because, you know, that could be who
redistribute
they
it.
are out of the fringe.
Can we recoin the Robin Hood myth somehow with Spriggans?
Yeah,
Little John
absolutely.
becomes a Spriggan.
Yeah, absolutely. That works very well. And the idea of Robin Hood having been a noble, you know, it could just be made up by the Fey Walkers. Yeah. Anyway, let's not talk about them anymore because that's not what we're here to talk
Oh,
about today. So,
we're about to be
ah,
presented with a cat. Yes,
hello,
that's all right.
Kiwi.
Hello, cat.
Yeah, I've got Vivian
Don't
beside me as
swear on
well.
camera. There
Oh,
you go. That's all right.
lovely. Hi,
Kiwi,
nice to see you,
Kiwi
love.
having made an appearance immediately means that our number of viewers triples.
Yes. Make sure that's the screenshot. The
Absolutely.
still is just like a bit
Yeah,
of Kiwi.
cat
Um,
on camera.
Lovely. So yes, that's the bit of the background of them. They kind of came in as an invasive species. They are out in the less very much less civilized areas. And actually, you know, to talk about my real world life, I recently qualified for as a hill and moorland leader, and it is quite apparent that there are parts of the UK that cannot be settled and civilized, and a moorland or a bog or a fen up in the high uplands, it's just going to pretty much stay wild. Like there's not much you can do to use it or constrain it.
Mm.
It's not a space that really fits that. So yeah, it is the wild places. Um it's wonderful and challenging, but you are in many ways more likely to get lost in the hills than you are in the mountains,
Mm.
and on the moors than in the mountains, because at least on a mountain you can just look off the mountain at
Mm.
what's nearby and spot some kind of landmark. Whereas you might just get, you know, lost in countless little hills and valleys and
Mm.
things with the mist all around you and the
Well,
featureless terrain.
and each with its own little microclimate and with the weather changing all the
Yeah,
time. It's, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's good stuff. Let's dive on into what we've written about them. Um,
Okay.
so where would you like to start? Do you want to have a look at the list first, or do you want to talk about the
Let's let's look at the list because this there are two factions in the current
mm,
game that are very much amalgamations of two entirely separate factions
mhm,
previously.
yes.
This is one of them. So
Mhm,
if you have played a previous edition of the game where you can play a leprechaun band or you can play a spriggan band,
mm,
those two things are now the Hillfolk generically, which means that you can mix and match them
mm,
up, which obviously calls for a little bit of reconciliation from previous views of what those two societies are.
mm,
But it wasn't all that hard to do. And I guess the major difference as well from a Spriggan perspective is that previously Spriggans had all these rules about growing and shrinking because the bit about Spriggans that I really love the background to the Spriggans is that they are these creatures that are huge trollish beasts
mm,
during times of darkness, but as soon as the light hits them they shrink. So it's
mm,
kind of like a troll can't go out in daylight myth, but it's sort of more ridiculous because rather than just turning to stone they shrink to these tiny little
mm,
creatures. So the kind of hilarious aspects around that, or that they live in these dens that are protected by these massive boulders, and at night they roll these boulders out the way and they go marauding. And if they leave it too long and the sun comes up, they become these tiny little creatures that can't put the boulders back, and then people come and plunder their dens. So it kind of gave room for scenarios. That is really fun. It's very difficult to do in a game context, and it requires you to have two sets of models for your Spriggans, a big Spriggan and a little Spriggan, and it's all a bit complicated, and you have to do stat changes and things, which is not beyond people's abilities, but it's a little bit of extra bookkeeping that's perhaps not really necessary. So the workaround that we came up with is that the Hillfolk for a very long time have had this power called Call the Crows. It was in the first edition, and it's come through more or less unchanged. There's a few differences in the sort of size of the area, but more or less it's unchanged. Where the idea is that you call this really thick host of crows, think like Crebain over Dunland, that then blocks out the light underneath them, casts a shadow across everything, makes it dark. And the leprechauns can do this. They're very magical. We'll look at their spells a bit later on, and so it makes perfect sense if you can do this and you have a folk living on your doorstep who are really vulnerable to the sun, that you say, hey look, we can make this shadow hover over you all the time and you'll never shrink. And so that's kind of the carrot, if you like, that's used by the leprechauns to get the Spriggans on side. Leprechauns are really short on muscle. They are not a hard-hitting troop type at all. That's not what they do. And so if they need some muscle, they're going to have to go and find the Spriggans who are on their doorstep and are ready sources of muscle, but have this vulnerability, so they can offer to appease that vulnerability. So that's kind of the basis. And I would love to see anyone who's putting Spriggans in their Hillfolk band, I would love to see models of Spriggans with a flock of crows modelled over the top of them, like an umbrella or a parasol, right? Giving them shade from the noonday sun.
Yeah, I love that. Which makes perfect sense in terms of sort of a logistical reason to bring them together. There is actually a third group as well in the Hillfolk, but they are a bit. They weren't nearly as prominent in previous editions.
No, the Peck, the hill gnomes. Yeah, and they didn't really have a type. You could take them as allies in the second edition, but they didn't really have a type. They were explored in Barrow Ring Burning, the first RPG supplement campaign, and I wanted to bring them in. I like their backstory. They have these masked Narg spirit hosts who are very much kind of, I don't know, say they've ripped off from like First People's idea of shape changes, but that sort of, they are disembodied animal spirits bound within a host, and when those spirits leave the host at the end of the possession, the host is completely wasted and dies shortly afterwards. So it's this sort of final extreme glorious savagery that the person never recovers from, but as a very last resort can be summoned up. So you can take these in a Hillfolk warband, but only if you have a Peck overseer, a hill gnome overseer as your warband leader.
Yeah, and like you said, they needed somewhere to be, and they are Hillfolk in terms of their nature.
Yeah, they are hill gnomes. Yeah,
and I do think there is something about the sort of us versus them as well, of being out on the fringe in the hills. Some of the other warbands are a bit more thematic, but this one is quite geographically constrained.
Yeah.
Definitely something that fits there.
And size-wise as well, you're never having a particularly large warband here. So if you're having a Peck overseer and 2 Narg spirit hosts, that's half of your band. If you're having Spriggans, you're having 4 Spriggans, and that's your band. If you're having leprechauns and you've got owls as well, and we'll talk a little bit about owls and what they do within a band, but that also reduces your number. So numerically, this is a small band. So it's not like you can have a mix of all the types. You just can't afford it within the figure count. These are quite tightly focused, but you've got several different kind of themes that you can go with it.
Yeah, and they are a warband that I think rewards sort of quite technical, tactical kind of approaches. You are annoying the pants off people, but the sort of low numbers but high if impact
Mm.
of the various models definitely works quite nicely. Okay, so in terms of the actual breakdown, then we've got choice of 3 leaders.
Yep.
Could have. Um, we've got Hag Mother, a very senior matriarch of the Leprechauns. She's a Fate Weaver and a World Dancer, and pretty solid, very solid stats for a Fate Weaver anyway. We've got Chornicrow as a leader Spriggan, so a very big, strong person who's also not particularly thick or slow for once. And we've got the Overseer as well, the Pech Overseer we were just talking about, who's got Eagle Eyes and Farsight. And each of those kind of fits a particular flavor. Obviously, you can mix and match within the warbands, but inevitably, if you kind of lean into one of those themes, it can pay off quite nicely.
And much the same for the Icraith as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got the Furdarig, which is a senior leprechaun who's also a Fate Weaver. So if you end up going, I want to have an Overseer and Spirit Hosts, unfortunately, you ain't got this other high-end Fate Weaver, the Furdarig, but they are very useful if you do go down the Hag Mother route. You've got, a Spriggan. Spriggan is in all of the other levels. Spriggan. And those lovely, terrifying Spirit Hosts, which are kind of blenders with Rending Claws. Definitely something to be feared, I would say, in a scuffle. Yeah. So, and you get 2 of them as well, which is quite nasty. Then you've got for the rink, you've got Chawns, which are your standard leprechauns. They also come with World Dancer. They're annoying, but they don't necessarily have that much impact. More Spriggans, and then the barguest as well, which is, what's a barguest, Jeff?
So the barguest is a one of these great black dogs in myths. My first experience of the barguest is as the kind of arch evil in Roger and the Rotten Trolls. Do you remember that program? No,
I'm not sure I do.
It was
I feel like even though we're the same age, you watched all your TV was like 10 years earlier.
Television. Yeah. Oh no, I think it's current. I mean, you can they're on YouTube. You can get the DVDs. I recommend it. It's a right laugh. Basically, a bunch of useless trolls living at the bottom of a valley get stumbled upon by this young schoolboy who becomes crowned king of the Rotten Trolls and has to sort out all of their problems, and teaches you about life, right? Gives you life skills during it. So it's one of these quite educational but subtly educational, and it's really, really funny. And there are these 2 trolls who have a rock band called Cattle Grid, and they go Cattle Grid. That's like their song. It's brilliant. Anyway, the big bad in that is the barguest who lives in one of the crags, and all you ever see are these giant, great, flaming red eyes. And when you're 8 years old, actually terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Encounter. So that's a lot of these black dogs in myths, they have kind of fiery eyes, or they have fiery maws or something, or there's the tinderbox, the legend of it's like the soldier who gets given a tinderbox, and then he has to go into this cave where there are dogs with eyes the size of dinner plates. You sort of imagine these great big eyes.
I don't know. A bell.
I don't know, but if the dog is like equivalent size, if his eyes are the size of dinner plates, the dog is equivalent size. Otherwise, that's potentially a dog with like really massive googly eyes on the front of his head, which isn't that scary. Dog. Yeah. But yeah, so that seems to be a fairly standard thing. But we've got dogs in the game already. So we've got Wisthounds or Wishthounds, who we'll get to them when we talk about Fey raids, but folk wise, they're a bit of a blend of the kind of Black Shuck legend and the Wild Hunt legend, and they are in a lot of legends. They are also black dogs because black dogs are more symbolic. But there's one very particular legend about Herne and the Wild Hunt where the dogs are white with red ears and red noses. So that's what we went for the Wish Towns.
Yeah.
But to be different, I've made the barguest have some kind of cat elements playing into this, like the giant cats on Bodmin Moor, for example.
Yes,
It's that sort of
absolutely.
idea of this kind of cryptid, if you like, although we all know there are big cats on Bodmin Moor because there've been enough sightings and photographs now that that's not really a legend anymore. That they're kind of pretty much confirmed, I think. So yeah, he's kind of part panther, part dog, with big fiery eyes and the ability to breathe fire. He's a flamethrower for you in game terms.
Yeah.
Which is not
common.
No, not common at all, unless you're a gnome, in which case you can have flamethrowers as well. But yeah, that kind of heated missile attack, not something that everyone can take.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and then it's also there's the Wolver out there as well, which is another sort of canine-ish thing. So there is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Lovely, yeah, but it is as scary as a Wolver, I would say, in terms of its fighting ability. It's pretty darn solid. Comes with Rend, Aura of Fear, and Fiery Breath. So yeah, quite a nice solid thing. But again, that would be replacing 3 whole Chawns, or a Spriggan. So
I mean, you've
there's a
got to
real
think,
balancing act.
what are you wanting to achieve with this warband? What objectives are you going to go for?
Yeah,
because you're going to need
this is not a
somebody to go and
warband
pick
where
up
you want
that
to just
stuff.
clobber people.
No.
You can. There are a few nice options for clobbering. In fact, in each of the Ichadere, the Rink, and the Firth, there is a clobbering choice. But at the same time, it's not. Clobbering is not going to be your main path. You're not goblins.
No, you're going to get that one chance to clobber, which if somebody takes that out, then that's your whole objective gone, isn't it? So it's
exactly.
a bit eggs in one basket if you go down that route.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last thing that's on here, so we've got more Chawns, more Spriggans, and then owls. You want to tell the world about how the owls play into it?
Yeah, so owls are spotters, or I guess you could kind of say they're familiars for the Hag Mother and the Fearderg. So the owls are little and they're squishy, and they have a flying ability, which is a single use per turn 12-inch move. So that's quite handy. That's quite fast. But other than that, they're nothing particularly special. Their perception is pretty good, and they've got night vision, so they're good for dealing with darkness. And we can talk about the kind of combo of Call the Crows and arrows, and owls a little bit later on. But yeah, essentially what they do is allow your Fate Weavers to target spells from the owls as well as from their own position. So you can keep your Fate Weavers hidden way back somewhere and send your owls out spotting targets, and then target your Fate Weaving powers using the owls. Which also means you're conserving all of the stamina of your Fate Weavers because you're not moving around all over the place.
Yeah, and that 12-inch move is nice, but people do like to wallop them if they can, because
they're only endurance 3. They go down very easily if they get caught.
Yeah, and they are annoying once people start using them as a conduit. And we'll get to why that is annoying shortly. I suppose so. When we talk about wood folk, there's the very clear sort of tactical game you play with them, which is in bush. And it is a bit more opaque at first glance. The sort of combo of owls, Call the Crows, and all the nasty kinds of fate weaving they do. So, do you want to kind of talk about how the first 2 parts of that play together, and then I'll sort of bring up how we chose to put our fate weaving together?
Pick up the fate weaving. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So as I've mentioned previously, the Call the Crows makes it dark. everywhere. And the thing about areas of darkness is that it immediately reduces your field of vision. So no longer are you playing with line of sight, you're playing with perception range only, which for most people is a couple of inches. So suddenly you're cutting down massively what you can target. The Hillfolk has a number of ways of dealing with that because the owls and the barguest have night vision, so they can completely ignore that. So if you can call the crows over an area, it moves around with the caster, but you can pass it off to one of the other members to run around with it. So you can pass an area of darkness off to one of your corns, who can then go running to make it dark somewhere else. If you can put that spot over the person that you want to affect, your owl can see through that, or you can hide your owl in that patch of darkness, and then nobody can see and target your owl, particularly not with shooting attacks, and they can't charge at it from very far away. But your owl can still look out and can still target other people. So it's a bit of extra protection for your vulnerable, squishy troops.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that hasn't really changed that much from the previous edition. It's something really solid. The ability to actually use that call of crows and also to hand it off. But previously it was a skill, whereas now it's in the fate weaving, which fits really nicely, I think. So moving on to the fate weaving side of it, what we kind of figured would make a lot of sense is for there to be sort of different scales of how magic works. So the Maeri, they're fate weavers. They take a long time to pull something off, but when they do, it has a really big impact. This is the opposite end of the scale. So they have a rule called prestidigitation, which is essentially you can spend any amount of stamina on, if you're a fate weaver and Hillfolk, on generating charge, and 1 point of stamina is 1 charge. So what that means is they build up charge like an absolute rocket. They just, spend 1 turn, that's 6 charge.
Yeah.
And all of their spells, all of their effects are charge 1.
Yeah.
So it's completely different. So, all the other factions, it takes more effort and more time to pull something off. They can outshoot the Fae, and the Fae get their charge for free. Nobody can cast as many spells over time as the Hillfolk Fate Weavers. They also have the special rule cantrips, which means that they can do as many fate weaving effects as they like per turn, as long as they have the charge to do so, and obviously the stamina for fate weaving as well. So their fate weavers are running around with generally 6 stamina, and what that means is they can do 3 fate weaving effects in a turn, and it only costs them 3 stamina the previous turn to build up that charge. So they can just go blasting loads of little effects, but these effects are not massively powerful, as we mentioned. So we've talked about Call the Crows, and Crowmark is the name of the ability to pass off your cloud of crows to someone else. The other effects are all tiny little annoying things which generally give a condition. So inauspicious route, somebody trips up. Butterfingers, they drop something, they can't use it for the rest of the turn. Gema Swirly, you spin someone around and point them in a direction of your choice. And Stingy Bastard, where somebody was hidden is no longer hidden because they encountered nettles. And it's just minor annoyances like that, but there's this wonderful extra rule on top of that, which is kind of the core of how you can really wind people up, and even the toughest of people can be messed up by you, which is that if you, every single time you hit a model with a fate weaving effect, they take a befuddlement condition, and if they ever have more of those than their wisdom, they immediately fall prone and remove all those conditions. So, if you've got 2 Hillfolk fate weavers and you hit somebody with 6 minor annoyances, they are definitely prone, which means that's a perfect time for your barguest or your Spriggan to go in and knock their block off. So that's one of the other major sort of tactical elements. You've got the ability to kind of fend off and slow people down and sort of almost act on them without them acting on you through Call the Crows. And then in addition to that, you have the ability to neutralize somebody, never mind the ability to just kind of slow people down and interfere with their ability to achieve their own goals, and then proper clobber them with befuddlement. So yeah, it's quite scary, and I think it's quite effective.
Mm.
It's not overpowering, but it is definitely going to wind up your opponents and also
Yeah.
give you the ability to have an impact on the board. But it is kind of a bit glass cannony, because if you have your Fate Weavers taken out and that was your tactical aim, you're done. That's it.
Yeah. It's for people who are Magic players, it's kind of like being a blue player with only nope cards in your deck, right? It's a bit like being able to stop or at least get in the way, slow people down from doing their thing, but it's not really going to necessarily help you do your thing at the same time. It's only kind of half the game. You need to be
Yeah.
still thinking about the other stuff as well, which is kind of why when you're in the campaign setting and you've got the path of the trickster, which is the Hillfolk's kind of main path, the secondary objective itself is to do with fate weaving, because it recognizes that that's kind of how you're going to be spending at least half of the game playing. So even if you don't manage to pull off your main objective just by dicking around with people, you're going to have satisfied that second. You're going to be getting somewhere along your path just by being annoying.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like you're playing a parallel game to everybody else in that respect. So yeah, it's probably worth going over that very quickly. So you mentioned the path. If you affect at least half of an opponent's starting models with at least one fate weaving power each before the end of the clash, you succeed. And that is just hitting them with one. So you could theoretically do it really fast. But it does require focusing on that and not necessarily doing the other things you were intending to do. They get access to escape route and tunnels on the Way of the Trickster, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those are ways for you to move differently around the board, arriving and departing. And yeah, they've got reinforcements on the Way of the Trickster. They've got skills. It's quite a balanced path, really. They've got stats. So the other thing is that you also have access to some other paths as well. Path of Acquisition, Guile, Opportunity, Rampage, and Forage. So you don't have to go down the Trickster route. Say you do want to go heavy on the Spriggan. Maybe you want to be rampaging instead. And just having a laugh with it that way. Maybe you're a bit more cunning and malicious and you want to be going down Guile instead of the Trickster as well. And you can ally with Mindfolk and Earthfolk, which makes a lot of sense. You've got the Earthfolk are traders, but also because they're constantly on the move between settlements and also literally underground a lot of the time, the fact that they would be trading with and engaging with, and probably in some cases paying like bribes to Hillfolk for safe travel, means that they might well call you in as mercenaries. And the Mindfolk love a good scrap, and so does a Spriggan.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't talked that much about Spriggan motivation besides saying they're bandits and we don't like them, boo hiss. But I mentioned that they have hordes, and the Spriggans kind of, it's quite cute. Their downside is that they just really like shiny things. They're pretty dumb and they don't understand what these things do, but they really like bright shiny things, and they just decorate their cave with them. So they'll go out and they'll steal sheep and cows to feed themselves because they're big and they've got massive hungers, and they don't grow or produce anything themselves. But other than that, if they just see something that they like, they're just gonna take that.
Yeah, just magpies.
Yeah, well, and in the previous edition, I can't remember if I talk about it in this edition. In the previous edition, the magpies were in league with them. They were bringing them tasty things as well. So yeah, they kind of line their nest with that, which makes Spriggan lairs particularly appealing targets for adventurers to go and rob. But obviously, there's some danger in
Yeah.
there.
I remember creating a very complex scenario involving that last edition, where the door and the entrance to the door was, the boulder, and getting the boulder in place in time as the sun set.
mhm.
And some people played it and they did enjoy it, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is definitely, let's say, it's a bit less streamlined than a lot of things in this edition. But who knows? Maybe
If
it'll make a reprint at some time
well, if
later.
you're picking up Miniature War Games magazine, the September issue, I believe, has a up to 10 players woods scenario in it, and one of those is Spriggans trying desperately to make it home and close their boulder before the other 9 players who've descended on the field find where it is and decide, oh, this looks good, we'll have some of this. So
Oh,
it's just
amazing.
it's one of the options that you can play as.
Oh,
Um,
lovely. I'm gonna have
um,
to buy a magazine again.
I think they do online ones as well, don't they? I can't remember. Um,
Interesting.
so the primary objective, we've talked about the kind of secondary objectives. So the primary objectives for Hillfolk is Fool's Gold, and
Yes.
that ties in a lot more to the leprechaun side of things, because of course we know leprechauns have their pot of gold, but they're not going to let you get anywhere near it. But actually, I mean, you could also make that a Spriggan objective, because there is real gold there. It's just that there are also a bunch of false gold areas, so fake layers essentially.
Mm.
Um,
Or
and you're
possibly even places that used to be your lair, but then you
yes,
didn't manage
and
to
you've
close the boulder, so you had to move your stuff.
so you've moved out of it. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
you've not been clever enough to move very far away, or maybe you've got so much treasure you can't be asked to move except round the corner.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
So that's all about trying to convince your opponent that the wrong layer is where you've stashed your treasure. Um, if you manage to get your opponent to go to, is it at least 3? Oh no, at least two fake ones before they go to the real one. So it doesn't matter if they find the real one after that. If they've gone at least to 2 fake places first, then you have a good laugh at them and achieve your objective.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a lot of fun. And it's actually quite a nice little give and take scenario as well, because whether or not you achieve your objective, your opponent can still find the real one and still get something out of it,
Yeah,
which I think is quite a
if
nice
you
way
let
to
them
do it.
off the table though.
Well, that's true. That's true.
If you're angry Spriggans, you might decide not to.
Yeah, very
You
true.
might let them find it, but not let them keep the stuff.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But yeah, that's as we said, very much on the kind of leprechaun side, but definitely justifiable for Spriggans. And I think there is something sort of core about them that they just don't none of them really have quite the same morality and objectives as everybody
Mm.
else. They're just doing things their own way, and
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah,
Well, it's fine for us because we're not the ones getting clobbered by a Spriggan,
yeah,
but yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no, they make their own rules, which
yes.
I guess everyone in a world that doesn't have an organized police force to an extent can.
Hmm.
It's just that these guys live in such small communities, so remote from anyone else, that they really don't have to kind of think of nice ways to organize that society. They can
Mm.
they can basically do what they want. There was, I think it's in the tableau supplement from the last edition, which has got the scenery rules for the kind of treetop homes that the
Mm.
leprechauns live in. There's a description of the hag mothers kind of tearing their hair out, trying to control this unruly mob. I kind of had in mind like the Lost Boys in Peter Pan, right? That all these,
Mm.
they just want to play, they just want to go and have fun all day and not have any responsibilities. And you've got this kind of motherly figure trying to get them to clean their rooms, and it's not
Yes.
happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is definitely something anarchic in the more kind of like general benign sort of sense about them, I think. Yeah, yeah, and who knows what kind of weird tropes we'll add in next type edition if
Yeah,
we have a next edition.
yeah,
But for now, that's what you've got. You've got some leprechauns, some spriggans, and some pech, and they are the people of the fringes. and they will annoy the shit out of you probably if you play against them. So if you've only got one person you play against, try and dissuade them from taking this as their warband.
Mhm.
Get them to play something that's a bit less of a wind up. Something straightforward.
I do,
Goblins, humans.
yeah, goblins, really straightforward. I do want though, so at Woods in the Woods this year,
Mm,
um, Thomas, Mr. Eagle's Moustache
mm,
Gaming, had a Hillfolk band with him that I really wanted to see play, and it didn't get
mm,
on the table, and I was disappointed because it had a barguest in it, and it had a
mm,
Peck Overseer, a Narg Spirit Host, and owls.
mm.
And I wanted to see how owls worked in a warband that doesn't have any fate weaving in it.
Yeah, just
Because
depends on the objectives
they,
you pick.
well, it does absolutely, because I mean they're still 12-inch move in a turn.
Yeah.
If you're vulnerable at the end of that move, but
Mm,
if you can kind of hide out, do a little move, grab something, and then do your 12-inch move away, actually
mm.
potentially you've got the ability to grab stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
if
all
you've
animals can interact with things.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've used your Barguest flamethrower or your Narg spirit hosts to take out somebody and they've dropped something that you're trying to achieve as your objective, can you just
Mm.
then sort of nip an owl in quickly in and out before somebody has a chance to turn up just to secure that thing? I don't know. I'd quite like to see that play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is something that like I love them. I want them to be in play. I just also know that if you played them like 7 times in a row and got boned the same way every time, you might eventually want to strangle that player. But then, we've all had friends like that in our gaming group who always pick the tricksiest.
Yeah, and you find a way to deal with it. And once you've dealt with them, once you've got
Mm,
a way of dealing with them, then it's on them. Then they've got to find a way around the thing that
yeah,
you've
true.
devised to deal with you. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
just keep thinking of like elf Blood Bowl players, That's the kind of vibe almost. Slippery
yeah,
buggers. Wonderful. So
great.
that's our hill folk. Who are
That
we
is
going to
our
talk
hill
about
folk.
next?
We're going to talk about Earth folk. We touched
Oh,
on them a
lovely.
little bit. And I
Yes.
have been doing quite a lot of writing about the Earth folk recently because they are the
Mm,
theme of this year's Advent calendar. And so I've been writing the book for that.
lovely.
So yeah, I will have some things to tell you about the Norlocks in the next video.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, hopefully you all are too. They've got some cool fate weaving as well, thematically speaking. I'm all about the
Yeah,
fate weaving these days.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks very much, Jeff. See you later.
Great stuff. See you again.